All right, let's talk about hair today. Specifically, hair transplants.
Sounds hairy.
Oh, you're gonna make puns the whole time. I should have known better.
Well, maybe just a few.
Okay. But seriously, folks, today we are diving deep into this whole world of hair transplants and focusing on one clinic in particular.
Oh yeah, I've heard of this place.
PROFUE, right?
PROFUE. It's in Antalya, Turkey.
Perky. Like the country Turkey.
That's the one.
It seems like, what, half the people getting hair transplants go to Turkey these days?
It's becoming quite the hub. I mean, it makes sense. It's beautiful there.
It's certainly on my travel bucket list.
And the prices, well, you can't beat them, especially compared to the US or Europe.
That's actually a really good point. So we've got PROFUE's promotional podcast transcript in front of us.
Laying out their whole pitch.
Exactly. So let's break this down, shall we? Figure out what PROFUE is all about, what makes them stand out, and what should you be thinking about if you're even considering this.
It's interesting, because they really play up this whole medical tourism thing.
Oh, absolutely. It's not just come get a hair transplant. It's come have an experience.
Right. They've got these packages, like all-inclusive, flights, hotels, transfers, the works. It's pretty slick.
So it's like, come for the hair, stay for the Turkish delights. But seriously, that convenience factor has to be a huge selling point, especially if you're traveling from afar.
Oh, totally. And the hotels they partner with, not too shabby.
Oh, really?
Some pretty swanky places in Antalya, like you're getting a vacation out of it.
Yeah, vacation with a side of hair follicles. Why not?
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Okay, let's get into the nitty-gritty. The hair transplant stuff itself. I see PROFUE offers two main techniques, Sapphire FUE and DHI. Can you break those down for us?
Absolutely. Well, let's start with Sapphire FUE.
All right, Sapphire FUE, what is that all about?
Basically, it's all about precision.
Precision, okay.
So it's follicular unit extraction, FUE. But get this, they use blades made from sapphire.
Sapphire blades, so they're like fancy.
Fancy and effective. They make these super fine incisions, which theoretically means less scarring and faster healing. It's kind of like, think about a scalpel versus a butter knife,
Yeah.
You're going to get a much cleaner cut with a scalpel.
Absolutely. So less trauma for your scalp, faster recovery, and we all want that, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
But what about DHI? How does that differ?
DHI, or direct hair implantation, it's interesting because it skips those pre-made incisions altogether.
What? No incisions.
They use this cool tool. It's like a pen called a Choi implanter pen. And they basically put each follicle directly into the area.
So each one individually?
Individually. And some surgeons think this actually helps the graft survive better.
Oh, how so?
Well, the follicles spend less time outside the body, you see.
That makes sense. It seems like both of these, a Sapphire FUE and DHI, have their own advantages. So how do you figure out which one's right for you?
That's where the personalized evaluation comes in. PROFUE really emphasizes this. They say their medical team will look at your hair loss pattern, how your donor hair is and what you want to achieve.
So it's really tailored to the individual.
Yeah, and then based on that, they recommend which technique is going to be best for you.
Okay, so let's play this out. You've had the consultation, flown to Antalya, you're at the fancy hotel. What happens when you show up for the actual procedure?
They have this whole step-by-step process.
Oh, okay.
They prep the scalp. First of all, get you ready.
Get you prepped.
And then, of course, apply local anesthesia. Key.
Right, because no one wants to be in pain during this.
Exactly. And then they'll carefully remove those little follicles from the back or sides of your head, the donor area.
Using the Sapphire FUE or the DHI pen.
Right. And then they very meticulously implant them into the areas that need filling in.
So following the hairline design they've already worked out with you.
Right, exactly. So it's pretty intricate work.
Oh, I bet. And time-consuming, right. It's thousands of tiny hairs being moved one by one.
They say it usually takes around 6 to 8 hours.
6 to 8 hours. Wow.
Yeah, but they do mention breaks for comfort. It's not like you're just strapped to a chair the whole time.
Okay, good. Because that would be, well, a bit much.
A little intense.
So what happens once it's done, the actual transplant? The post-procedure care? What's that like?
PROFUE seems to have that pretty well covered.
Okay, that's good to know.
They give you these detailed instructions, a headband to protect everything, and a whole post-op kit.
Post-op kit? What's in that?
Special shampoos and lotions, things to help with healing.
Okay, and they even include an overnight stay nearby, so their team is close if you need them.
Exactly. They're holding your hand through those first few hours.
That's good. But what about the long term? Do they provide any follow-up?
Oh, yeah. They say they do follow us, making sure everything is healing right.
That's reassuring.
And they have a hotline if you have questions. 24/7.
Oh, wow, that's quite comprehensive.
It really is. It's like from the first consultation all the way to a year later, they're there.
So let's be real, what about the hair growth timeline? People want to see results. How long does it actually take?
Well, they're honest about the fact that you'll probably lose some of the transplanted hair in the first couple months.
Oh, really?
Yeah, apparently it's normal.
That's got to be a little nerve-wracking, though.
Totally. They call it shock loss.
Shock loss.
Yeah, the follicles are just adjusting, you see?
So they say new growth should kick in around month 4 to 6.
Yeah, and the full results, you're looking at about 12 months.
A full year, so it's a waiting game.
It is, but hopefully worth it in the end.
Okay, so we've covered techniques, the whole process, aftercare. But what about the cost? Hair transplants aren't known for being cheap, let's be honest.
This is where PROFUE really tries to stand out.
In what way?
Well, they're saying they're much more affordable than the US or Europe.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, they even break down the costs on their website, comparing,
What kind of price difference are we talking about?
like, let's say 3,000 grafts using the Sapphire FUE technique. With them, it's around $3,000. In the US, it could be 10 to 20,000.
Whoa, that's a huge difference.
It is. But remember, cost shouldn't be the only thing you're looking at.
Of course not.
You want good quality care, a surgeon with experience.
A good reputation, right?
Exactly, before you jump at the lowest price.
Because a bargain isn't a bargain if you end up with a botched hair transplant.
Exactly. That's a great point.
So they've got the tech, the experience, the support. They're emphasizing affordability. It sounds like PROFUE is checking a lot of boxes.
You really are.
Yeah.
But I think this leads us to some really important things to consider that go beyond the shiny marketing.
Okay, that's a great point. Let's hit pause here, and we'll come back and dive into those crucial considerations in part 2 of our deep dives. Stay tuned, folks. Welcome back to the deep dive. We just went through everything PROFUE is offering, but now it's time for, well, a reality check.
Right.
This is surgery we're talking about.
It is.
There are risks, and it's not something to jump into lightly.
Absolutely not.
So what are some things, some red flags that our listeners should watch out for when they're researching hair transplant clinics?
I think one of the biggest red flags is unrealistic promises,
Oh, like what?
like guaranteeing a full head of hair overnight.
Or like 100% success rate.
Exactly, stuff like that. Run for the hills if you see that.
Yeah, if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Remember, hair growth takes time, and everyone's different.
Another thing I've always heard is make sure you look into the surgeon's qualifications.
Oh, that's essential.
Don't be shy about asking for credentials, certifications, proof that they know what they're doing.
And before and after photos.
Yes, like real patients, real results.
Exactly. You want to see what kind of work they actually do.
It's like checking out a restaurant's reviews before you make a reservation.
Uh-huh. I like that analogy.
You want to know what other diners have experienced?
Exactly.
What else should we be wary of?
Well, a clinic that pushes hair transplants as the solution for every single type of hair loss, that's a bit of a red flag. Remember, they work by moving existing hair. You have?
So if you don't have enough to move...
Right. If you have a lot of hair loss and not many donor follicles, it might not be right for you.
They might try to sell it to you anyway.
They might. But there could be other things that would work better.
Like medication or those scalp micropigmentation things.
Right, depending on your situation.
So it's about finding what works for you, not what makes the clinic the most money.
Exactly.
Now, PROFUE does highlight their experienced team and their fancy facilities.
They do.
But how can listeners go beyond the marketing and get a truly objective view?
Independent research is key.
Okay, how do you do that?
Don't just rely on their website.
Right.
Read reviews from actual patients.
Ah, okay.
Check online forums. Maybe even talk to a few different clinics to get different perspectives.
So it's like buying a car. You don't just take the salesperson's word for it.
Exactly. You read reviews. You compare prices.
You test drive a few different models.
Exactly.
Okay, so same with your health.
Definitely.
Now let's talk cost.
The big one.
PROFUE talks about being affordable, and their prices do seem lower than US or Europe.
They do.
Hmm.
But as we said, affordable is relative, right?
Right, because there can be those hidden costs you don't think about.
Yeah, like what?
Like travel expenses for one.
Oh, yeah, flights, getting around.
Then there's accommodation, especially if you're in one of those fancy hotels.
Right, and what about follow-up care?
Oh, yeah, well, you need to go back to Turkey for that.
Exactly. So make sure you know the total cost, not just the initial surgery price.
That's a really important point. It's easy to get excited and overlook those extra expenses.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's get a bit deeper into the techniques themselves.
Right.
We touched on Sapphire, FUE, and DHI, but let's unpack them more, pros and cons.
Yeah, good idea.
Just so our listeners can really make informed decisions.
Definitely.
And of course, we are not medical professionals.
Right.
This is just for informational purposes. Always talk to a qualified surgeon to figure out what's best for you.
Absolutely. Always consult with a professional.
Okay, so let's start with Sapphire FUE again.
All right, so with Sapphire FUE, those sapphire blades, that's what makes it different.
Okay, how so?
Well, they make these tiny, precise incisions,
Right, we talked about that.
which means faster healing, less scarring,
And a more comfortable recovery, right?
right, less trauma. This is particularly good for people who are prone to keloid scarring.
Because it minimizes the tissue damage.
Exactly.
So for someone worried about visible scars, Sapphire FUE might be a better choice than the traditional FUE.
It could be, yeah.
But again, the surgeon's skill matters a lot too.
Oh, absolutely.
Even with the best tools, an inexperienced surgeon can still mess things up.
Yeah, or create results that look unnatural.
So don't just focus on the technique itself, do your research on the surgeon too.
Exactly. Look at their experience, their track record.
Okay, makes sense. Now what about DHI? What are its big advantages?
Well, one of the main advantages is that it could increase the survival rate of the transplanted follicles.
Oh, interesting how.
Well, because with DHI, remember, those extracted follicles are implanted immediately right into the recipient area.
Right, directly.
So they spend less time outside the body, which can be a good thing.
Especially for finer hair types.
Yeah, it's more precise placement, minimizes damage to existing hairs.
So if you're someone with fine or thinning hair, DHI might be a better option.
It's possible, yeah.
Also, I've heard that DHI can sometimes achieve a higher density of those follicles,
Oh, yeah, that's true.
which would be good if you want that fuller, thicker look.
Exactly.
So again, both techniques have pros and cons.
Yeah, it's not a simple answer.
So how do you know which is right for you?
Honestly, the best way is to consult with a qualified surgeon.
Makes sense.
They can look at your hair, your hair loss, what you want.
And they can give a personalized recommendation.
Right. And don't be afraid to ask questions.
Or get a second opinion if you're not sure.
Exactly. It's your hair.
Now, let's talk about something that's often glossed over. Recovery.
Oh, yeah, the not so fun part.
What can people realistically expect after a hair transplant? What are some things they might need to change about their lifestyle?
Well, the good news is that modern techniques, they're much less invasive.
It's good.
And recovery time is shorter compared to the old ways.
So that's something, at least.
It is,
Yeah.
but it's still surgery.
Right.
There will be some things you need to be mindful of.
Like what?
Strenuous activities are out for at least a few weeks.
So no intense workouts,
No CrossFit for a while.
no heavy lifting, no contact sports.
Anything that could make you sweat a lot or strain your scalp.
Okay, so stick to gentle things like walking or yoga for those first few weeks.
Exactly.
What about sunlight?
Oh, direct sunlight's a big no-no.
Why is that?
Those UV rays can damage the new follicles.
Ah.
So
No.
wear a hat, sunscreen, on your scalp when you go out.
What about swimming?
Most surgeons say avoid pools and open water for at least a few weeks.
Oh, okay. Why is that?
Well, chlorine can irritate the scalp,
Right.
and open water, well, who knows what's in there, bacteria and stuff.
Yeah, true.
So stick to showers or baths for a while.
Okay, so no strenuous activity, no sunbathing, no swimming. What about hairstyling products?
Ah, good question. Nope. Most surgeons say no to those too.
Oh, really? Like what kind of stuff?
Gels, sprays, dyes, anything with harsh chemicals.
For how long?
At least a few weeks.
So embrace the au natural look for a while.
Exactly. Let those follicles settle in first.
Okay, what about sleep? Any special considerations there?
Some surgeons recommend sleeping with your head a bit elevated.
Like how?
Extra pillows, that kind of thing.
For how long?
Just the first few nights after the procedure.
Okay, why is that?
It helps reduce swelling and improves blood flow to the area.
Ah, okay. And what about sleep positions?
Try not to sleep on your stomach.
Oh no, I'm a stomach sleeper.
It can put pressure on the transplanted area.
Okay, no late night tummy time for a while then.
Exactly. It's a small price to pay for the potential benefits, though, right?
Yeah, that's true. Speaking of potential benefits, let's talk about scarring.
Ah, yes, the big concern.
Is it just inevitable? How noticeable will it be?
Well, the good news is that techniques have come a long way.
Okay, that's good to know.
Sapphire FUE, with those tiny incisions, it usually results in minimal scarring.
And once the hair grows
You
in?
can barely see it. often.
And DHI too, right?
Yeah, the incisions are very small with that as well.
But even with the best techniques, some people might scar more easily than others.
That's true.
Like, why is that?
Individual healing, skin type, genetics, all sorts of things.
Okay, so if you're really worried about scarring,
Talk to your surgeon about it.
like what can they do?
They can talk you through their experience, their techniques for minimizing it.
Ah,
And they can show you photos of previous patients so you get an idea.
real world examples.
Exactly. And remember, there are ways to hide scars if they do happen.
Oh, like what?
Scalp micropigmentation, for example.
Right, the tiny tattoos.
It can make it look like there are hair follicles where the scar is.
Clever.
And even certain hairstyles can help.
So don't let the fear of scarring stop you from exploring hair transplant.
Exactly. With the right surgeon, the right technique, scarring can be minimal.
And manageable if it does happen.
Right.
Now let's talk about expectations.
Oh, expectations are so important.
People need to be realistic about what a hair transplant can actually achieve.
Yeah, it's not a magic wand.
What are some common misconceptions that we should address?
I think the biggest one is that it'll give you a full head of hair overnight.
Instant results.
It's not like that. It takes time.
It's surgery. It's a process.
Exactly. It's moving existing hair you have.
It takes time for those follicles to settle in and start growing.
And it's not a permanent solution.
Oh, right. Because if you're genetically predisposed to hair loss.
Those remaining follicles might still thin out over time.
So it's not like you get one transplant and you're done.
It might require touch-ups down the line.
Ah, okay.
Depending on how your hair loss progresses.
And those touch-ups might not always be possible.
Right. If you run out of donor follicles, for example.
That's a really good point.
It's not just about getting the transplant. It's about managing your hair loss long term.
That's so important to keep in mind.
It is.
Now, let's talk about something that's, well, a bit more personal. The emotional side of hair loss.
Oh, absolutely. That's huge.
It's not just the physical changes, it's how it affects you emotionally.
It can really knock your confidence.
People might feel self-conscious, embarrassed,
Yet even depressed.
avoid social situations,
Wear hats all the time.
spend hours searching for solutions online.
It can take over your life.
It's a big deal, and it's important to acknowledge those feelings.
Absolutely.
If you need support, reach out.
Talk to friends, family.
Or even a therapist.
There are resources out there.
You're not alone.
Millions of people go through this.
And for a lot of people, a successful hair transplant can be transformative.
Oh, yeah.
They regain confidence, feel more attractive.
Like a weight has been lifted.
But it's important to remember it's not a magic fix for everything. It can help you feel better about yourself, but it won't solve all your problems.
No, it won't.
You need to have realistic expectation.
And address any deeper emotional issues that might be there.
And if you are struggling,
Don't hesitate to seek professional help
a therapist can give you guidance and support.
and help you develop healthy coping mechanisms.
Now, let's talk money again. The cost of all of this.
All right, back to the financials.
We know PROFUE focuses on affordability,
They do.
but what factors actually influence the cost of a hair transplant in general?
Well, the extent of your hair loss is a big one.
Meaning,
The more hair you need transplanted, the more complex it is, the more it costs.
makes sense.
The technique used also matters.
Right, like Sapphire, FUE, and DHI are generally more expensive.
Exactly. They require more specialized equipment and expertise.
The surgeon's experience plays a role too.
Oh, absolutely.
More experience, more reputable surgeons usually charge more.
They can.
And then, of course, location.
Location, location, location.
Big cities, countries with higher costs of living, clinics there tend to be more expensive.
Makes sense.
So listeners, do your research.
Yes.
Compare prices from different clinics.
Don't just look at the initial number.
Understand what's included. Are there hidden costs?
What about follow-up care? Is that included?
You need to compare apples to apples.
Right.
And remember, cheapest is not always best.
Definitely not. Prioritize quality of care
The surgeon's expertise.
and the clinic's reputation.
Okay, I think that's a good place to take a break. We'll be back for the final part of our deep dive where we'll wrap everything up and leave you with some key takeaways. Don't go anywhere. And we're back for the grand finale of our deep dive into hair transplants with PROFUE.
The moment of truth.
We have explored so much, the process, the risks, the different techniques,
The emotional side of it
all those things you need to think about.
Definitely.
So now it's time to, well, wrap it all up.
Bring it all together.
What are your final thoughts on all of this?
You know, it's fascinating how PROFUE has created this whole, I don't know, almost flawless package.
They really have.
They address pretty much every concern someone might have about getting a hair transplant.
Yeah, the convenience, the tech, the price, the experience.
It's all there.
It's like they're selling a dream, a hair restoration dream vacation.
Exactly. And it's brilliant marketing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
But as we've been saying all along, you have to look beyond that.
We have to.
Dig deeper, do your research, weigh the pros and cons.
Don't get swept up in the excitement without thinking critically.
A hair transplant is a big decision.
It is, both financially and physically.
So before we say goodbye, what's your biggest takeaway for our listeners? The one piece of advice you would give to someone thinking about this?
Don't rush into it. Take your time, do your research, and talk to multiple experts.
Get those second opinions.
Absolutely. It's your hair, your health, and your money.
That's great advice. So, listeners, as you continue exploring this world of hair transplants,
Be skeptical
be
and
informed,
be empowered.
ask questions, compare your options, and don't settle for anything less than the best possible care for you.
Right. You deserve the best.
And remember, this is a personal decision.
It is.
There's no right or wrong answer.
It's about what feels right for you, your goals, your expectations.
Well said. And on that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive. We hope you found it informative, maybe even a little entertaining.
The few hair puns in there. Had to keep it light.
You just couldn't resist, could you?
Never.
Until next time, folks, stay curious, stay informed, and keep on learning.